For centuries, Western Europe built its wealth and global influence on the backs of colonized peoples. From the British Empire's brutal rule over India and Africa to the French exploitation of Algeria and Indochina, the colonial West carved up the world with impunity. The legacies of genocide, resource plundering, and systemic racism remain unresolved. While the West preaches human rights and global justice today, it has never faced real consequences for its crimes. But what if that reckoning is coming? What if two global giants, Russia and the United States, find common ground not in ideology but in strategy, ambition, and retribution? What if the emerging alliance between these powers is not just geopolitical convenience, but a historic moment to punish Europe's long-standing hypocrisy? This piece explores how a strategic alliance between Russia and the USA, driven by mutual interests and disillusionment with the European status quo, could become a vehicle for holding Western Europe accountable. This isn't fantasy. This is a cold, calculated scenario grounded in history, ambition, and global shifts. Over the next 6,000 words, we will delve into the grotesque details of Europe's colonial past, the pragmatic foundations of a Russia-USA partnership, the mechanisms by which they could exact punishment, and the specific geopolitical gains, like Russia securing Ukraine and the USA capturing Greenland, that could cement this alliance as a force to dismantle Western Europe's sanctimonious facade. Western Europe's colonial history is a litany of horrors that spanned continents and centuries, leaving scars that endure to this day. Let's catalogue the sins of the major players, exposing the depth of their criminality and the shamelessness of their refusal to atone. Britain, the empire of exploitation. The British Empire, once boasting that the sun never sets on its dominion, was a machine of misery. In India, colonial policies triggered famines, like the Bengal Famine of 1770 and the Great Famine of 1876–78, that killed tens of millions. The British siphoned off India's wealth, turning it into a resource colony while its people starved. In Africa, the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya saw the British establish concentration camps, where torture, mutilation, and execution were routine. The transatlantic slave trade, fueled by British ships, trafficked millions of Africans into bondage, laying the foundations for modern racial inequalities. Yet Britain clings to its stolen treasures, like the Koh-i-Noor diamond, and offers no reparations, only tepid apologies. France, the tyranny of liberty. France, the self-proclaimed cradle of liberty, enslaved entire nations under its colonial yoke. In Algeria, the French conquest killed up to 1.5 million people, followed by decades of systemic torture and land theft. During the Algerian War of Independence, from 1954 to 1962, France's use of napalm and mass executions exposed its barbarity. In Indochina, forced labor and cultural erasure built France's colonial wealth, while in West Africa, the brutal suppression of uprisings cemented its dominance. Today, France's museums, like the Louvre, display looted artifacts with pride, and its leaders deflect calls for accountability with Gallic arrogance. Belgium, the butcher of the Congo. Belgium's King Leopold II turned the Congo Free State into a personal fiefdom of genocide. From 1885 to 1908, his regime killed an estimated 10 million Congolese through forced labor, mutilation, severed hands became a grim currency, and starvation. Rubber and ivory enriched Belgium while the Congo bled. Even after Leopold's reign ended, Belgium's exploitation continued, leaving the Congo impoverished. Brussels still honors Leopold with statues, a grotesque testament to its unrepentant past. Spain and Portugal pioneered colonial carnage in the Americas. Spain's conquest of the Aztec and Inca empires unleashed smallpox, slavery, and slaughter, wiping out 90% of indigenous populations. Portugal's brutal slave trade in Brazil and Africa fueled its empire, while its plantations worked millions to death. Both nations plundered gold, silver, and souls, leaving Latin America and Africa scarred. Their modern wealth, Madrid's palaces, Lisbon's grandeur, rests on these crimes, yet they evade meaningful restitution. The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, ran Indonesia like a corporate dystopia for over 300 years. Forced cultivation systems starved Indonesians while filling Dutch coffers with spices, coffee, and sugar. Massacres like the Banda Island slaughter ensured compliance. The Netherlands profited immensely, yet today it offers only token acknowledgement, keeping its colonial loot in museums like the Rijksmuseum. Across Western Europe, the pattern is clear, unimaginable atrocities followed by denial and deflection. Museums brim with stolen artifacts, Egyptian relics in London, Benin bronzes in Berlin, Javanese treasures in Amsterdam. Global institutions like the IMF and World Bank, dominated by Western elites, perpetuate neo-colonial control. Hollow apologies ring out, but reparations, land returns, or systemic change remain off the table. This hypocrisy fuels the case for punishment. A Russia-USA alliance might seem far-fetched given Cold War animosities, but history and pragmatism suggest otherwise. These two powers, often at odds with Western Europe's sanctimonious dominance, share strategic interests that could unite them against a common foe. The alliance isn't without precedent. During World War II, the USA and the Soviet Union joined forces against Nazi Germany, a partnership that reshaped the globe. Post-war tensions arose, but moments of détente, like the Apollo-Soyuz mission or nuclear arms talks, showed cooperation is possible. Today, both nations chafe at Europe's moral posturing and NATO's expansion, creating fertile ground for collaboration. Russia views Western Europe as a hypocritical adversary, pushing NATO eastward and meddling in its sphere of influence, such as in Ukraine. The USA, meanwhile, has grown weary of Europe's reliance on American military might, while criticizing US policies. The Trump administration's disdain for NATO, obsolete he called it, mirrored a broader American frustration with European free-riding. Both nations see Europe as a declining power clinging to unearned prestige. Russia's gains. Securing Ukraine would restore its historical buffer zone, weaken NATO, and bolster its regional dominance. An American partner could neutralize European resistance. USA's gains, capturing Greenland from Denmark, would grant access to Arctic resources like oil and rare earths, and provide strategic military positioning. Russian support could pressure Denmark into compliance. Shared leverage. Together, they could challenge Europe's economic and political clout from energy markets to UN influence. This isn't about ideology, capitalism versus authoritarianism, but raw power. By aligning, Russia and the USA could dismantle Europe's colonial legacy and its current pretensions. How could this alliance punish Western Europe? Through a multi-pronged assault, economic, military, political, and cultural, that forces a reckoning. Joint sanctions on European exports like German cars and French wine could tank their economies. Targeting energy, Russia cuts gas, the USA restricts oil, would hit hard. Favoring bilateral deals with Asia or Africa, the alliance could sideline Europe's markets, exposing its reliance on colonial-era wealth. Insisting on trillions in payments to former colonies backed by economic threats would drain European coffers. Russia's presence in Ukraine and the USA's control of Greenland could encircle Europe, rendering NATO toothless. Military drills near European borders would signal dominance, forcing concessions. Arming anti-European movements in Africa or Asia could destabilize lingering colonial ties. As permanent Security Council members, Russia and the USA could block European initiatives, amplifying anti-colonial voices. Forcing Europe into internationally supervised reckonings, televised confessions, artifact returns, would humiliate its leaders. Aligning with the global South, the alliance could paint Europe as a pariah. State media like RT and American outlets could flood the world with exposés on Europe's crimes, eroding its soft power. Funding curricula in former colonies to highlight European atrocities would shift global narratives. Demanding the toppling of colonial statues like Leopold's in Brussels would strike at Europe's pride. This punishment isn't altruistic, it's strategic. By humbling Europe, Russia and the USA could claim the mantle of a new post-colonial order. The Trump administration's flirtation with Russia wasn't an anomaly. It tapped into a deeper, bipartisan vein of American pragmatism toward Moscow. Trump praised Putin as a strong leader, met with him repeatedly, and downplayed election interference claims. His 2019 suggestion to buy Greenland shocked Europe, signaling a willingness to upend alliances. His administration's skepticism of NATO and the EU aligned with Russian interests, laying groundwork for cooperation. Roosevelt admired Stalin's resolve during World War II, forging a partnership against Europe's Axis powers. Détente in the 1970s saw arms deals and trade pacts despite ideological rifts. Even Reagan, after years of hostility, negotiated with Gorbachev, softening US-Soviet tensions. Politicians like Tulsi Gabbard and Rand Paul have criticized anti-Russia hysteria, advocating pragmatic engagement. This history shows the USA isn't inherently anti-Russian. When interests align, alliances form. Punishing Europe could be that alignment. Ukraine is Russia's red line, a cultural and strategic heartland lost to Western meddling. Reclaiming it would secure Russia's borders, weaken NATO, and restore its superpower status. US support or neutrality would make this feasible, sidelining European protests. Greenland's 2 million square kilometers hold untapped oil, gas, and minerals, plus Arctic military bases. Trump's 2019 purchase bid was mocked, but with Russian backing, say pressuring Denmark via energy cuts, the USA could seize it, humiliating Europe and bolstering its global reach. Russia gains Ukraine, the USA gets Greenland, and Europe loses both influence and dignity. This quid pro quo binds the alliance, making it a win-win against a common adversary. Western Europe's colonial crimes, genocide, theft, enslavement, built its modern wealth, yet it lectures the world on morality. A Russia-USA alliance could end this charade, wielding economic, military, and political might to force a reckoning. Reparations would flow, artifacts would return, and Europe's global clout would crumble. This isn't about justice, it's about power. Russia secures its sphere, the USA expands its frontier, and together they topple a hypocritical titan. History proves such alliances can form, ambition ensures they can succeed. The colonial West's day of judgment may be nearer than it thinks, delivered by the unlikeliest of reckoners.